I tried Dr. Peter Attia's morning routine for a week, and it's not what I expected. First, who is Peter Attia? He's a longevity expert, for lack of a better term, and I actually first found out about him on the Tim Ferriss show back in March of 2015. That was episode number 65. And ever since then, I've been hooked. I love his content. I'm a huge fanboy.
You have 3 boyfriends.
Who are they?
This guy here. Oh, it's Andrew Huberman, not Mike. Andrew Huberman, Chris Williamson, and your number 1 daddy is Peter Attia.
And that's for a few reasons. He's brown, he's Egyptian. I'm brown, I'm Indian. He dropped out of general surgery residency. I dropped out of plastic surgery residency. He's into cars, namely Formula One, as well as tractors. You can see my Ayrton Senna helmet right up there. He's also a huge Senna fan. And very few car enthusiasts actually care about driving and improving their driver skill and going to track days, which he does. I do the same thing. You can actually see my Jabal and Cars YouTube channel right up here. And he's also focused on health in a really intentional, well-rounded way, in a way that I find aspirational, because he does certain things way more hardcore than I do. And I thought that I was pretty regimented. And there's things that we can all learn from, but I wanted to try a week in his shoes to see how it felt. So 1 week following Peter Attia's morning routine. Now, depending on the interview or the podcast episode that you're listening to, you're gonna find small details to his morning routine that seemingly contradict one another, which makes sense because I know, speaking for myself, my morning routine is gonna change January of 2024 to October of 2024, there are things that have changed. Similarly, when you look back a year or two, a lot of things have actually changed. Most nights, he's sleeping around 9 or 10 p.m. and waking up at 5 or 6. He says he's in bed for about 8 hours and sleeping for 7.5 because he uses sleep trackers, which we'll get to shortly. And I was really excited to do this because when I came back from India, jet lagged, I was sleeping around 8:30 to 9 p.m., waking up 3:30 to 4:30. And there's something about waking up early, you just feel way more productive. I've had different phases in my life, like when I was in med school, and even some phases earlier last year, where I just love waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. because I feel like I get so much done. That is one aspect I really enjoy from his routine. Unfortunately for me, I got sick with the flu, and even though I don't feel sick anymore, my body's still recovering. So if I'm needing to sleep 10 hours and wake up at 7 a.m. rather than 5 a.m., I'm gonna listen to my body and wake up later. But waking up earlier, around something like 5 or 6 a.m., is something I want to reincorporate into my routine because I do tend to get a lot more done. Now, upon waking, he first checks his 8 sleep data. He uses the 8 sleep mattress cover, and that does track your sleep stages, most notably, it's your resting heart rate, your HRV, your breathing rate, and your total sleep duration. I don't really trust any of these consumer grade sleep trackers with regards to tracking how much you're in different stages of sleep, but he checks that first, and then he goes to Morpheus. Morpheus is this armband, and it measures your resting heart rate and HRV upon waking. So you lay down for 2.5 minutes, and it asks you a few questions. How long did you sleep? The quality of your sleep, how sore are you, and how do you feel?
Step 1, measure HRV. I don't have the Morpheus arm strap, so I'm just using a chest strap with Elite HRV on my phone.
Now, these are very soft, qualitative questions, not very quantitative, but it takes your answers plus your resting heart rate HRV in the morning, and then it tells you how hard to push yourself, where your different heart rate zones are for the day. So I've been doing probiotics every morning for however many years. And one of the new ones I've added recently is actually Acromantia from Pendulum. Attia does the same one every morning for the metabolic health benefits. Then after that, somewhere along the line, he's returning urgent emails here and there, and then he drops his daughter off to band at 6:30, back by 7, also helping his young boys get to school shortly after. I obviously don't have a family, so that's extra time for me. I actually don't like checking my emails though, so I don't like looking at my emails until it's time to work because otherwise it kind of throws me off, and then I'm thinking about that while I'm trying to do other things. I like to start my mornings a little bit slower, more intentional, and not get into that reactive state if there's something frustrating at work or something I need to get to pretty quickly. Usually it can wait a few hours later. And then the part I thought I would love the most. He then either does archery, which I personally don't do, or sim racing. And I do have a sim racing rig in my house. I like this strategy of using it early in the morning, one of the first things you do, because that's a way to ensure you actually use it and you actually do it. And becoming a better driver is easier said than done. You gotta put in the hours, you gotta put in the time in the seat. And going to the racetrack is ideal, but obviously that's like a whole day thing. So doing these smaller bits on your sim rig can actually prove very beneficial. And it feels kind of wrong, I'm not gonna lie. It's like, it's a weekday, it's early morning, and rather than getting on meetings or doing emails and things like that, I am hopping on the sim rig for at least 30 minutes. And here we go.
Oh my god. You hit the wall.
I spun out. I should also mention that earlier in the morning, soon after waking, he does drink coffee. I'm normally a tea drinker. I tried coffee this time around. My French press tastes like garbage because it's been several years since I did French press regularly, and I've forgotten all the details of how to make it taste good. I think he actually does French press though. But as Huberman talks about, you generally want to have caffeine no sooner than 90 minutes after waking so that your body can naturally clear adenosine from the brain before caffeine, the competitive inhibitor at these adenosine receptors, can be most effective. So I'm of the camp that don't want to use caffeine every single day and develop a tolerance. So I'm probably going to stick with tea moving forward, and only on days when I feel like having it, which is most days, but not every single day. Another thing I've struggled with from time to time is maintaining consistent energy throughout the day. And it's not uncommon for me to have a really hard slump in my energy right around early to mid-afternoon when I want to be most productive. And that brings us to today's sponsor, Ketone IQ. Ketone IQ is exogenous ketones, and your body uses this as fuel, but it's a clean energy boost without sugar, without caffeine. So when it's around 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, too late for me to use caffeine, I can take one Ketone IQ shot, and that helps to boost my energy in a clean way that doesn't really crash. I'm more focused and I can tackle my work with better intentionality. One of the issues with coffee, which a lot of people drink, is that you tend to get this jittery feeling because the caffeine is not balanced out by something like L-theanine, which you get in tea. But the nice thing with Ketone IQ is you don't have to worry about that. You get this calm and clean state of being focused and energetic. The thing that first got me interested in HVMN and their Ketone IQ product is that a lot of the cyclists in the Tour de France, I think it's like 60% of cyclists actually use their product because it helps with peak performance. And I've tried it when I'm cycling myself. I think I'm just too slow and too much of an amateur to see the level of performance improvement where it matters. But I was pleasantly surprised to see a much larger magnitude of benefit when it came to its utility as a productivity drink or to help with sustained focus and getting work done. You can save 30% off your first subscription order of Ketone IQ at hvmn.com/Jabal. Peter normally starts working at 11. I'm getting on the bike now at 10. Got a 10 o'clock meeting with my team. On internal teams, sometimes I do zone 2 training while I'm in the meeting because hopefully I'm not having to do too much talking, and it's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So let's go. He actually works out every single day, showers, has a quick bite, and then gets to work. By the time he gets to work, it's 10:30 or 11. This is probably the biggest thing that I struggled with during the last week. Now, when asked about how does he only work 6 hours per day, he says, well, I'm working a little bit before, I'm working a little bit in the evenings as well, and he also does a decent amount of work on the weekends. And I think a big part of it too is that he's later on in his career, he's more established, he has a larger team, and he doesn't have to work as many hours as he likely had to do earlier on in his career. So I think for a lot of us, myself included, I'm grateful that now I'm no longer working 80, 90, 100 hours. When I was first running the business, it was all me and I had to put a lot of time and effort. But now, like, I can sleep and work out 2-3 hours a day and do the other things I want to do because I'm not having to spend as much time. But I'm not at the point yet where I can spend only 6 hours a day, plus or minus a little on the ends, like Peter Attia is doing. As for his exercise routine, on Monday he does lower body strength training plus some stability work. This is 90 to 120 minutes. Tuesday, zone 2 for about 45 minutes, followed by 1 hour of stability work. Wednesday is upper body strength training with stability, again 90 to 120 minutes. Thursday, zone 2 followed by 1 hour of stability. Friday, lower body strength training plus stability of 90 to 120 minutes. Saturday is zone 2 in the morning, and then upper body strength training plus stability in the afternoon. And then Sunday is zone 2 followed by VO2 max. So he's doing 4 sessions of zone 2 per week. That's 45 to 60 minutes per session, and 1 higher intensity VO2 max session, and then 4 strength training sessions per week. And I've been doing a similar system for the last 2 years before I even heard about his routine, which is that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday is strength training in the gym. And then also on those same days, I do zone 2. But what I found more helpful is doing zone 2 when I'm on meetings, because I'm not gonna do it with like an external meeting when I'm meeting someone and they're like, why are you sweating on a bike? But with my internal team, they know I'm kind of weird, and they know that, okay, Kevin's doing a meeting with us and he's gonna be on the bike in zone 2. I sound a little bit out of breath, but again, in zone 2, you can have a conversation. You sound like you're exercising, but you're not struggling as hard to talk in full sentences. But when trying out his routine, one of the issues I came across was that to do all that in the morning, your strength training and your zone 2, which occurs on some of these days together, you're not able to separate them as much. And ideally, you do want to separate out your strength training and your zone 2 by a few hours so that you're not having cross-contamination with the adaptations of each type of exercise. So maybe he does zone 2 like really early and then waits a couple hours and then does strength training. I'm not sure, he didn't really clarify. Now, while I focus on just the morning, he does have a pretty intentional approach to his whole daily schedule. He takes sleep very seriously, and he says that he functions best with consistent wake up time and sleep time, which all of us do, and we've talked about plenty in our sleep videos on the Medical Insiders channel. One of the things I experimented with that I do really like is he will brush and floss his teeth right after eating dinner. And the reason why, 2 reasons. Number 1, he can then go to the sauna, and I don't have a sauna at home, so I didn't do this part, but he'll go to the sauna, shower, and then go straight to sleep without having to worry about his brushing and flossing routine. But the other thing is it prevents you from snacking after dinner, which I think is very helpful, because a lot of us, if we eat dinner at 6 or 6:30, whatever it is, and you brush and floss right after, and then you get tempted at 9 p.m. to snack on something, if you've already brushed and flossed, you don't want to do it because you don't want to go through brushing and flossing again. So I actually really like that. I'm going to incorporate that into my future routine. And another part of that is not eating within 3 hours before going to bed, which is something that I also adhere to most days. But there was one day, Saturday, where we worked really long that day. I think we were filming until like 7 p.m. We have this new really comprehensive research course for pre-meds and med students that want to really bolster their application. So we finally finished filming that, but then I went for a workout after, then ate, and then went to sleep. So eating dinner at like 9 p.m., sleeping at like 10 p.m., not ideal. And my whole, like my blood sugar at night was all over the place. And my sleep was also really not as restorative as it normally is. It serves as a good reminder and a good lesson why you shouldn't be eating too late. So on that day, should have really just prioritized working out earlier in the day. Driving to get a CT angiogram done, which is not something you do every day, but in Peter Attia's book, Outlive, he really highlights how important it is for us to get ahead of the ball when it comes to heart disease, because of course it's the #1 killer of Americans, and it is highly preventable. But medicine 2.0, what we generally practice in the US this day and age, it doesn't take it far enough, he would argue. So what I'm doing right now is I'm 33, I'm getting a CT angiogram done. You can also get a calcium score, not as high resolution of a test, but it's a little bit cheaper. But I'm getting this CTA done to see my atherosclerotic disease progression, which everyone has as they get older, because that's gonna inform me and my primary care doctor how aggressive we're gonna be with our lipid targets. So I'm already on a statin and ezetimibe right now, and not getting my ApoB exactly where we want it to be. Want it to be below 60. I'm hovering around 70s, low 80s. And depending on the results of the CTA, that's gonna inform our next steps. He enjoys alcohol quite a bit. 0 to 8 drinks per week is his range, and never more than 2 drinks in a single day. He enjoys alcohol a lot. I also enjoy whiskey quite a bit, Japanese, Scotch. And true to form, I did drink more alcohol this week. I had 3 different drinks on 3 different nights, only 1 drink per day, or sometimes even less than 1 drink, something like half serving. And there's no health benefit to small amounts of alcohol. If you look at the actual literature about, oh, like 1 glass of wine per day there's like this J-shaped curve. I'm not gonna go into the details of that, but there's no physiologic health benefits from even small quantities of alcohol. But pro-social benefits, sure, depending on the person. Looking at my metrics from those 3 nights where I did drink alcohol, I had it plenty early, something like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. a few hours before I went to sleep, I saw no detrimental effect with that small amount of alcohol separated by a few hours from when I fell asleep. All right, so key takeaways, things I like about his routine, things that I'm probably not gonna do. Let's start from the top. Sleep time, wake up time. I personally feel best 10 to 6. Being consistent with your wake up time is incredibly important. And there are also data to suggest that if you're not sleeping at a natural time for your circadian rhythm, if you're going from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m., you're not gonna have as restorative and restful sleep as doing 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. as an example. I like waking up and checking your sleep performance first thing upon waking to then see how hard to push yourself during the day. And I don't use Morpheus, but I use Oura Ring, I use 8 Sleep, and I'm testing a few other products right now, including Whoop. You can find reviews of those products coming soon to the channel, so make sure you're subscribed. And I like how much time he actually focuses on just stability. It's something I was doing before and will continue doing. What I'm probably gonna do moving forward though is start doing my stability / mobility first thing in the mornings and then do strength training at the gym right after. Because zone 2 and my indoor cycling workouts, I can generally do that when I'm on a meeting later in the day, and that's several hours apart from my strength training. I don't like how he does both of them in the mornings closer together. I should also clarify that Attia has built up an impressive foundation of physical fitness because I know when he was in his 30s, he was doing like 20 to 25 hours a week of cycling. Granted, he probably wasn't doing strength training and other things, stability, etc. But I do more zone 2 than him every week because I'm slow as for a cyclist. So I do zone 2 at least 5 times a week, and then I do 2 harder rides normally on Wednesdays, which is a day off from strength training, and then also on one weekend, either Saturday or Sunday morning. And the reason I think this would work better for a lot of people is that if the weekends have more flexibility, it allows you to not worry about exercise as much when you're traveling, when you have a little getaway, when you have other things you want to do on the weekend. So fitting in cardio, I think, is a lot easier than fitting in strength training, because when you're traveling, it's easy to go for a run or get on a stationary bike. It's a lot harder to find a facility that has all the equipment you need for your strength training routine, depending on what you're doing, because he does his upper body strength training on Saturdays. I like the brushing and flossing right after dinner. I'm gonna start doing that regularly as well. But alcohol, I generally drink once or twice a month, 1 or 2 drinks, and sometimes even less frequently than that, because for me, I'm fine using alcohol only for special occasions or when someone visits me from out of town, and not making it a regular part of my weekly routine. I like the idea of doing sim racing early in the mornings, but I really struggle with that because in the mornings when I'm the most productive, I want to get to work. And I tried doing sim racing at night after work, but then it's like the screens are too bright, doing it right before sleep is too activating. So there has to be a different time of day, probably right after I finish working, maybe in the late afternoon to early evening. But perhaps the one thing that he is most wrong about, and many of you are, is for drinking coffee over tea. Tea is simply the superior drink. And if you want to know more, here's why.